You know what that's from?
No.
You don't know what I just did? So, hello, everybody. Thank you so much for being here. I was doing a countdown because a countdown was showing up on my screen, and I was doing my best. 8, 7, 6, 5, 4. What?
Spaceballs?
Oh, my gosh, no. I was doing my very best Hunger Games when they're counting down, when they go under the thing. I know, like right? So we're just starting out right at the beginning with a movie quote. No. Thank you so much for being here. You did not come here for movie quotes, and don't you worry. We're going to actually talk about, not actually like we never talk about fish, but we're going to talk about fish tonight. We have a thing, before I even forget, happy Valentine's Day, everybody.
Yes, happy V-Day.
So hope you're having a wonderful day. And I thought it would be very appropriate today to talk about fish that fall in love easily. And they like to have babies when they fall in love. And so we're going to talk about some fish that are easy to breed.
Lots of babies.
Lots of babies, that's right. And we're going to talk about some fish that maybe aren't so easy to breed. We're going to talk about some fish that are easy to breed but shouldn't be because it's going to be a big problem. And it's because sometimes we get overrun with babies. I'm sure some of you have had that experience before as well. So it's all about the babies tonight. Fish, little fish babies. So that's what we're going to be talking about. We've got a lot of things going on here. And I'm glad you're here. I'm glad you're hanging out with us, that you're spending the time just chilling on this wonderful Valentine's. So here's a funny story before we get into all the fish-related things. Eli and I, we went out to dinner. We do this every Wednesday. We go to the gym, and then we go grab something to eat. And we went to the hot spot tonight. You want to know, in our area, what was totally packed? You won't believe this. I mean, you'll know because you saw the straw.
Oh, yeah.
Culver's. We walk in there, and I kid you not, we walk into Culver's, we order. I look around, and there was literally one table available, and we happened to sit at that table. What was more interesting is it was all couples.
Really? Oh, for Valentine's Day, they all went. Was it older couples?
Yes, it was. They were
so
almost
cute.
Everybody there. It was couples that were probably certainly over 60, quite possibly in their 70s, and they were just sitting there happily enjoying a meal.
Isn't that cute?
But even funnier is we did see a couple of very young people there, like maybe high school, 13, 14-ish. And like the girls were dressed in red and the boys were all, you could tell they tried to make like, they had a button-up shirt and like with a collar and everything. So
cute.
Yeah, they took their Valentine's Day dates out to Culver's. And then there's me and Eli sitting in the middle of this place. And we're looking around like, where are we? Usually the place is pretty empty. So that's the story. That's what was happening there. So like I said, glad you're here. Thanks for hanging out with us tonight. It's going to be awesome. A lot to talk about, even, beyond the fish breeding realm. We've only got Joanna here for half the live stream because she's got to pick up Eli at around 8:40 our time. So, but you've got some things to say tonight as well. Do want to talk about the videos that have come out recently. The video I did on Sunday was on the Aqua Illumination Blade LED light. Got a lot of comments like, wow, that's a lot of money for a light. And I know, I even said it in the video right from the start. And if you haven't seen the video, check it out because it's still a really cool light with a lot of features. It is my favorite light now. I mean, yes, it's expensive. I'm just going to say that right now. It's an expensive light. It is probably the most expensive LED strip light out on the market, but you get an insane amount of crazy color spectrum and adjustability for that. But it's the lights that are up on the gallery tanks, at least 4 of the 5, and I'll talk about the low boy lights in an upcoming video. But if you haven't seen it, it's pretty cool. It is a pretty cool light. Is it necessarily a light that I would put on all 40 fish tanks in the fish room side? That would get a little, admittedly, it would get a little costly, and I get that, but it is a pretty cool light. So that was Sunday. Today on the small scape, I watched your video. Would you like to share with everybody what your video was about?
For today?
Yes, today. Today being Wednesday.
I was reading a comment. I did. Did you see it?
You watched me watch it. I was sitting right.
I don't know. You
walked in here.
Okay.
I had my little screen right there, and I was watching it with audio as you walked in.
I didn't see what you were watching.
I was watching you. You didn't
really?
hear your voice?
No.
Blah, blah,
Well, I
blah,
usually hear my
blah,
voice,
blah.
but it's in my own
Okay,
head.
so now you can tell everybody else what it was all about.
Oh, it was things that I used to do when I started this wonderful hobby that I no longer do, or vice versa. Things have
Listen to me
changed.
is one of the things.
Right, I
I noticed
scrapped
that the other day.
Scrapped it.
When you first started your channel, The Smallscape, I was the one that was doing all the editing. You asked me for all kinds of advice. I felt like a VIP of your life, at least in terms of videos. I was like, wow, I feel really special. And then today I'm watching your video and I realized you haven't even consulted, talked to me about your videos, not your topics, not what you were doing, no questions. I haven't edited one of your videos in probably, I don't know, a couple of years. And then I realized today, I'm like, I am no longer a VIP in your fish keeping life. I'm just some random dude.
You used to have me. I would like clear like the topic with you first. Like, this is what I think I'm going to do, and you'd be like, nah, I would do this or change it or whatever. Then I just stopped telling him.
Yeah.
He's like, what's your video? I'm like, you'll have to see.
You'll have to see. It's kind of like when she asked me, what's the members videos about? I'm like, well, you're not a member. And
I've never seen a single one. I don't know what goes on.
So yeah, we talk about all kinds of really life-changing, important stuff in those videos, and you've never even seen one.
But then again, who scaped the tanks recently in your gallery?
Yeah.
Wasn't me.
It wasn't me.
Wasn't me. It was.
Yeah. It was really
See?
fun.
So you've taken on new roles. I've taken on new roles.
And speaking of the gallery, thank you for the segue. I wanted to talk about the gallery for a second. I know we got to get through. Hold on. Let's get through the rest of the videos. Tomorrow we've got the members video coming out. Sunday I have a video about some changes that not changes, but some fish that we've added to some of the aquariums in the gallery. Because as you know, as you watch those tanks go up, there was still some, with the exception of the Lake Tanganyika 75, the first aquarium we ever did, and the low boy, the 125s, definitely needed additional stocking. You haven't seen the last 75 that is already up and running. We're at a point now in the gallery, all the tanks, I think I mentioned this last week, but all the tanks are up and running. One of the 125s still has some more inhabitants that we're going to be adding, but all of those fish are in the fish room. They've now been here 2 weeks. We've got 2 more weeks left before we can pull them out of the quarantine tanks, and I feel comfortable putting them in that 125. So that's done. We have, right now as we speak, downstairs, we have a bunch of stuff that is for decorative purposes that is going to be going into the gallery as well. I've got a little bit of work to do just to kind of spice things up with the walls and everything. I got a hold of the Xfinity people, and they are coming out on Friday to run all the data down in the gallery so that we can move all of this down there. It will not be next week, maybe the week after or the week after that, because there's still a lot of testing I have to do. It's actually, the more I get into the details of it all, now it's the nitty gritty. How high should the chairs be? Where is the camera exactly going to be? What's going to be the camera elevation? How much of the backdrop are we going to see? What parts do we want to see? We don't want to sit too high because then we're blocking a low boy. You don't want to sit too low, otherwise you're going to see the stand. We have all of these things, and there's going to be some testing. And then that's just the video aspect of it. Then we've got the whole audio aspect. These mics, generally speaking, do an outstanding job, probably one of the best on the market, of doing a great job of kind of making sure that extraneous noise isn't being included in the audio. However, we still have some challenges. While the gallery side is very quiet, the fish room side still has a central air pump and all those sponge filters. And so I'm going to have to figure out how to minimize that noise while still having an enjoyable experience for everybody who's listening to the live stream. Because let's face it, that's what a lot of people do. They put it on, they listen, they might have their headphones in, and the last thing we want to do is give them an experience that is not as enjoyable from an auditory perspective. So I got some testing to do. All that to say, once we get the data down there, it might take me a couple weeks to really figure out how to dial everything back in, because everything you see here, while it's not perfect, at least in terms of the lighting and the audio, it's taken a while to get that to a point where we're like, okay, this is acceptable for a live stream. And so now we have to do it all over again. So that'll be fun.
So that's good, because I can only drive around with a dresser in my car for so long.
Yeah, and you've got some furniture for this area. That's the other thing too. So if you are not subscribed to the Smallscape, I would highly recommend doing that, because you are about to rip this live stream studio apart and basically bring it down to bare wall, not like studs or anything. Like, she's not going to be like redoing. Although we are putting up a wall over like this way over here, it's actually, so what we're in is actually a loft, and you can see all downstairs and everything. So that's our live stream studio. But we're going to be putting a wall in here because you need the wall for shooting video purposes, for basically a third or fourth backdrop.
For quiet time and privacy.
Yeah, and to get
Shut
rid of
the
a lot
door.
of noise and
Then
all
I don't
that
hear
stuff.
the dogs.
So, yeah, it's going to be crazy. So you're going to have a lot of stuff to think about, and a lot of things to decorate up here.
Yes,
besides
lots
just
of
and not to mention the
decorations.
aquascapes that you're going to be doing in this area to get you
I'm
started
not going
too.
to have any aquascapes.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, that's just bare walls, man. I've gone very minimalist.
Minimal.
Congratulations. So yeah, that's the things that are coming on now. The one thing I didn't mention so far, which is probably the biggest deal in what's going on in the land of content, and that is, you've probably seen it if you haven't. I will mention it now. John from KG Tropicals and myself, we started a new channel, a brand new YouTube channel. It's called the Tank Talk Podcast. The link is in the description. Would love, if you haven't already, to go over to that channel, check it out. I never asked for this, but when a channel's just getting up and running, subscribe if you can, and hopefully you find it valuable and listen to the podcast. And we're not only on YouTube, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple, wherever you normally get your podcasts from. But we released our first one on Monday. So the Tank Talk Podcast, we're on Instagram. Believe it or not, I started up a TikTok channel for that as well. So there's some reels and some shorts. I know I just figured if we're going to do the Facebook and we're going to do Instagram, why not throw it on there as well? But yeah, so the Tank Talk Podcast, we had our first episode on Monday. They'll be coming out every Monday morning. We are releasing another one this Monday. We've already had a lot of people watch it. Really appreciate it if you were one of them. Again, it's going to be fun because especially what we saw, we actually pre-recorded a few of these podcasts already, and it was a lot of back and forth, a lot of ideas, and we're going to be hitting all of the really cool subjects that you would expect to hear about when it comes to fish keeping. There will be guests. We mentioned this in the first podcast and maybe in John's live stream last week, but one of the things that we're going to be doing is we have a lot of relationships with people who are in the industry, right? Not just in the hobby, but in the industry. We have expert master breeders. There's a dozen of them that I could contact that have been breeding fish for 40 or 50 years, that have bred literally many hundreds of fish, all different types of fish. We have industry people, from wholesalers, from importers. We've got people who have done really important things in the industry, and we're going to be bringing them on that podcast as guests as we go through and schedule these things. So it's going to be awesome. We're going to, like I said, the topics that we've already covered, that we've already recorded, are going to be great. I hope that you find value in that. But yeah, the Tank Talk Podcast, if you head over there, check it out, subscribe, take a listen, see if you like it. The first one is really kind of our background, so it's kind of introducing. You get to hear my whole history of fish keeping. That's not something I think that I've ever done succinctly, and I basically tell the entire story of how I got into fish keeping. John does the same. John's story is pretty interesting at times. Mm-hmm. So check it out if you'd like. That would be pretty awesome. And we'll have, like I said, we'll have a new one out on Monday morning. So
great way to start a week.
Lynn says, I love the Tank Talk Podcast. Well, thank you. If you checked it out, I hope our goal is to just, you're doing water changes, you're on your way to work, you just want something to listen to and something related to fish. We can give you that an hour and 15 minutes, sometimes a little bit longer, of just chill out, listen to fish stuff, and it's going to be awesome. Whip says, is there a link to it yet? Yes, it's in the description of the live stream. So if you go in there, I put the Tank Talk Podcast YouTube channel, and if not, you could just type in the Tank Talk Podcast. There's going to be one channel that comes up that's not us, and then you'll see the little fish with the microphone. If you scroll down a little bit, bam, there it will be. So that's what's going on in the land of videos. Did you want to say anything? You look like you had something to say.
Well, I always have something to say.
It's true.
We already wished everybody a very happy Valentine's Day. So to all the greetings we're getting, yep, right back at you. And Steel Waves is actually in the house.
What's going on?
Having some health issues.
Oh.
Happy to hear that you are feeling better.
Good.
Welcome back
Good.
to this weird little gang that we have on Wednesdays.
Yeah. Okay, so places we're going to be, and then we're getting right into the subject, I promise. Sunday the 25th, of this month, I've mentioned we have the GCCA in Northbrook and the Quad City Swap in Davenport, Iowa. We will be at both of them. The website will be updated sometime early next week, I would say, with all the fish that we have for pre-sale. We've got some really, really cool stuff. Some things we haven't had for a while, some things that are looking absolutely awesome. So Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, somewhere in there, check it out, and we will definitely have that updated. Okay, can we talk about fish that fall in love?
Yes.
It's Valentine's Day. I think we should be talking about fish that love each other, and as a result of that, will provide you with lots of other little tiny miniature versions of themselves. So I think the first thing, can we talk about why fish breeding is so cool? Do you have any insight as to why fish breeding might be cool?
Because anything miniature is adorable.
It is true. And Oink, thank you so much, by the way. So Oink just put the Tank Talk podcast link in the chat. So that was awesome. Appreciate you doing that. So yeah, it's fun, right? I don't care how long you've been keeping fish. I don't care what fish they are. They can be fish that you've bred 1,000 billion times, and it's still fun to see the little babies. And so it is fun.
Eyeballs.
It's exciting. And not only that, but it's also educational, right? The idea that you set up an ecosystem in your home and it allows living things to make more little tiny living things. There actually aren't that many pets that you keep where that is something where if it happens, it doesn't completely disrupt your life, right? So
True.
Just imagine all right, hold on. Imagine for a second, you've got 2 dogs. You go away and one day you come home from work and you look in wherever the dogs are hanging out, and there are 50 tiny little dogs looking at you. Could you imagine if that happened? Or you had 50 kittens.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my gosh, they had more kittens. Wow, look how cute they are. That would be extremely disruptive. I mean, think about it. Even if you've kept hamsters or gerbils or, I don't know, pet mice, and they have babies, you're like, okay, these are going to require some attention now. But fish, often when they breed, it's cute. We don't have to freak out about it. So we get to enjoy baby life and not necessarily have to freak out like we would if it was a furry animal that we've come to know and love. Alicia says, I have 15 dogs. That's pretty cool.
Oh.
But lucky for you, they probably didn't all just magically appear one day at the same time. Bet you would have freaked out about that. I know I would have. So that's pretty cool. The other cool thing is sometimes you can make a little money. Sometimes people will breed fish. Believe it or not, some people breed fish on purpose.
What?
With the intent of growing up those fish to a sellable size and then selling them off to other people, pet stores, places.
Forever homes.
They're forever homes, right? So there is that aspect of it too. In fact, we did an entire video series about how to breed fish for profit and, by the way, how to breed fish for loss. But I put the first video in the description of the live stream in case you want to check it out. But the entire playlist is awesome. Basically what we did is we went from a 10-gallon all the way up to, I think, a 125 and everything in between. We talked about which fish for each size tank might be beneficial to breed, where you could potentially make some money and also have some fun. It's a true story.
Word.
Now, there are some reasons why you might not want to breed fish. Why would you maybe not want to have your fish fall in love and make babies?
Space.
That's actually one I didn't even have on my thought list.
Well, eventually they grow up. Initially,
you just kind of messed up my mind. You completely screwed up my whole flow. I didn't think you were going to say that.
It's my job.
It's totally true, especially for some fish, some larger fish. If they breed, you might find that you need a whole bunch of aquariums to house the juveniles and maybe another set of fry. And so you start getting a little bit overwhelmed. I'm sure some of you have experienced that before. Maybe just the one aquarium that you have is getting crowded and you don't know what to do. I can't tell you how many times we've heard that in the comment section or here on the live stream or at the swaps. Hey, I have these fish and now I've got 200 of them. I don't know what to do. And it's like, okay. And sometimes, depending on the fish, if we think that we can resell them and, based on all the swaps we go to, I'll be like, hey, bring them on in and we'll take them. But other times it's like, yeah, that's going to be a tough one, right? So yeah, space is certainly a consideration. I think the other thing too is, and this kind of goes with the space situation, is if they're fish that are maybe undesirable, which we'll talk about in a few minutes. There are some fish where you breed them, you're like, now what am I going to do with these? Because nobody's going to want them. And I'm going to give you some really good examples of that here in a few minutes of fish where it's like, trust me, I know it would be cool to see these particular fish I'm about to talk about have babies, but you're not going to be able to get rid of them. And what do you do as they start to grow up? Because literally you're going to go to pet stores. They're not going to want them. You're going to try to go get I've seen this we've seen this a million times where you have people who are like, yeah, I'm going to get a swap table at the next swap. I'm like, oh, that's so cool. What do you got? And they're like, okay, well, we've got mutt guppies. I've got a whole bunch of stuff and we're going to try to sell these things. And I'm like, okay, but look around the swap because there's 100 vendors here and you've got 30 vendors that are trying to sell these guppies and you're going to be vendor number 31 and it might be a little bit tough to move. And then you said you went to the pet store and they're like, well, we can't really first of all, they weren't going to give you any money. And then like, well, we'll take some of them, but we can't take them all. And you're like, well, I'm running out of space. So that can be a big issue. Now, I will say, do you remember the first fish, like when we got the fish room finally up and running, not the first fish I ever bred, but the first tank that we set aside where we started getting a lot of fry?
Maltese?
That's a really good guess.
Or Brichardi?
Nope. Brichardi came later, but this is fish number 1. Easy to breed fish. All right, so fish that fall in love very easily. And as a result, they're going to give you a ton of babies.
Food, sinking pellets.
You used to hate these fish too.
I did.
The bristle nose pleco. This is horrible camera work. This was like the second video I ever filmed. So I'm sorry, the camera work is going to be really shaky. I didn't know it was a Samsung Galaxy S6. That's what you're seeing there. So these happen to be super reds, chowing down on some Apache. But bristle nose plecos, if you're looking for fish that are easy to breed, these are certainly fish that are easy to breed. The only downside is,
they usually get
like we just talked about, and at least in our market, and again, all this is very market specific.
Every time I walk in there,
you get, especially now the super reds, you might get a little bit more for sure. But if you're breeding standard bristlenose or the albinos, we see them all the time at the swaps for maybe anywhere from $1.50 to $3 a piece at pretty much this size, which I think in this video you're looking at maybe a 2-inch bristlenose pleco. Again, super reds, green dragons, those will go for more. But these fish
want him to clean up the glass and kind of clean up the tank.
Oh, the video's playing sound? Oh my gosh, hold on.
From that point forward,
oh my gosh, yeah, it is. So I'm talking.
Preferably,
hold on.
right before you turn off the lights.
Let me see if I can fix this. I can't. Here we go. Sorry. Thank you,
Chris. Were there two of him talking? Ooh.
Oh, that is like seriously messed up. So there we. Oh, I'm gonna have to fix the rest. So they're all gonna do that now. I did. I muted the background. I forgot to do it when I was setting this thing up. My bad. It should be better now. So anyway, yeah, these fish are pretty easy to breed. They give you a lot of fish, and 20 gallon, this was a 20 gallon long that you're looking at. So that was more than sufficient. This was some of our green dragons, I think, at the time that we had. Again, really awesome camera work there, but you get the point. So those are definitely easy. Now I'm going to click on this next one. This was another one that was very easy for us to breed. The sound is going to start coming out. I'm going to have to stop it here.
The females can show
that right now. There we go. Okay. So guppies, how many of you, I would love to hear in the comments section, how many of you have bred guppies before, whether it was on purpose or by accident. These are by far one of the most common fish, and I think it is one of the fish that people, just generally speaking, you get guppies, you see the babies, totally cool, and then within what would you say, like a month, 2 months, 3 months, the next question is, what's the next question?
What are you going to do with them?
Well, that's
where'd they go?
Yeah, what do I do with all these guppies? And I've often provided suggestions like the Dumbo ear guppies that you see here. These were fish that when we were breeding them were in high demand because, the males had these awesome Dumbo fins, and the colors were insane. Even the females had a really awesome color, as you can see here. But a lot of the guppies, you really have to pick the right strain, because if you don't pick the right strain, if you don't pick something that's in high demand that people are like, wow, that's the coolest guppy I've ever seen, they can be a little bit tough to move, right? So these sometimes are fish where you bring them to a pet store and you're like, hey, you know what? I've got a bunch of guppies. And they're like, that's great. We've got that tank over there. Here's a can of fish food. And you're like, okay. So, but if they are guppies that are in higher demand, you can still make a little bit of money on them. You mentioned one that we have done, and again, I'm gonna have to turn the volume off here because I failed at my job earlier.
Around an inch and a half or so, and the males just look.
Can't figure out how to get this to go. Okay, so this is Neolamprologus similis, but a lot of the shell dwellers, these are great fish, and in certain areas, they can be really expensive. And I still don't understand why. You know, when you go to the local pet stores and stuff where you're still seeing 15, 20, 25 bucks a piece, right? There's some pet stores by us.
Oh, yeah.
They're pretty expensive.
Rude.
Do you even remember how many tanks of different types of shell dwellers we had at the peak of shell dweller keeping / breeding?
Shell dweller dumb.
Yeah. At least
4 or 5.
5. I think we had at one point 5 or 6 different. So we had, okay, hold on. We had Maltese, very similar to this. This is Similis that you're looking at here. Brevis, Calypterus, Gold Ocellatus, Meleagris, Signatus. So that's 7 right there. Forgetting, I know that I'm forgetting at least a couple. So at one point, I think we had up to 9 different shell dwellers. They pretty much all bred fairly readily. Some of them are a little bit slightly more aggressive, but still super easy to breed. This is a cool fish. I love the community dynamics of the shell dweller. They're really interesting. The problem is, again, in our area, once people have them, they generally don't need any more of them because you get 4, 5, 6 of them and they start doing what shell dwellers do. If you've got the right water parameters, guess what? You're going to have a lot of shell dwellers. And so like even in our 50-gallon lowboy, it's not uncommon to have 250, 300 in there. Not all of them are adults. Some of them are very, very tiny, but that is a fish where easy to breed, very cool. So if you want to get into something that's breeding, that's relatively like kind of just hands-off breeding, right? So your guppies, your bristlenose plecos, your shell dwellers like these, they're all pretty much hands-off, right? We didn't do anything super special to breed these fish other than put the fish in there, give them the environment, and let them do their thing. Let them fall in love, and that's what they did. And they made, and these are, all right, so, and I'm curious what you think too. So in the comments, of the 3 that we've talked about so far, which are the cutest babies? Guppies, bristlenose plecos, or shell dwellers?
Oh, gosh.
If you had to pick one of the 3.
Well, bristlenose plecos are adorable, but I would have to go with like probably the shellies because of their blue eyes.
Yeah,
their little eyes.
I would probably pick between the bristlenose pleco and the shell dweller. I actually think I would slightly lean towards the bristlenose pleco because when they finally come out of the cave, when Dad lets them out of the cave, and their little tails are always wiggling back and forth, and they're attached to things, and it's like, hey man, I'm a little sticky bristlenose pleco, just sticking to all this stuff now. And I bet they're super excited by that. Could you imagine being a little baby bristlenose pleco? Dad lets you out of the cave into the big world of the aquarium, and the first thing you do is you swim up to a piece of glass and you think, all right, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try to stick to it. I just know I can. Something in my little tiny bristlenose brain is telling me I can stick to things.
You can do it, Junior.
And they're like, oh, like, hey, man, I'm suspended. I can just sit here on the glass forever or up on a leaf somewhere.
I do need to see baby Cory cats, though. I have never, with my own eyeballs, seen. I remember you said that you had them in, but maybe I just couldn't see them, or I was like, oh, I'll see them, and I forgot. But I've not ever seen them, and I don't think I could handle it.
They're very cute, very cute fish. So these are fish where if you're interested in breeding, they will usually give you a lot of fish babies, fall in love pretty easily. The next one, and this is one that I think, this is the whole group.
When we look at these fish and why
there we go. This was our 75-gallon Amuna tank. And it's interesting because people ask, hey, do the fish hybridize? Do the Amuna hybridize? We never had that happen. So the red zebras that you see here, we would only get red zebra fry. The yellow labs would only give us yellow lab fry, ACI, and so on. So we bred a lot of the fish in this 75-gallon Amuna tank, but we never got any hybrids at all. So they would always breed true. They would always breed with their own species. There's slightly more effort here with the Amuna because what happens is the females hold the eggs, right? So you see them munching. It looks like they're kind of chewing on something. What I say slightly more effort, if you don't remove the female and she spits out all the fry because they incubate the eggs in their mouth and then they spit out the fry after about 2.5 to 3 weeks. If you don't remove the fry or remove the holding female, then the other fish in the tank are going to eat the fry. So the only added step with this one compared to the others is I like to net out the female, put her in a 10-gallon tank, let her spit her fry out, hang out there for a couple weeks because they're also not eating while they're holding the fry for the most part. So, but these, if you're looking for a fish to breed, now these ones, I've already kind of mentioned the 3 that we've already talked about. Sometimes they can be a little bit difficult to move. Shell dwellers, maybe not, depending on your area. There still might be a market there. These guys, the issue is A lot of people see African cichlids as aggressive. They're a little bit larger than shell dwellers, require a bigger tank. And so now you start to eliminate potential customers because of the potential aggression, the water parameters, higher pH, harder water, and then the size of the tank. But great. Do you have a favorite Mbuna? Like, did you have one that was like, oh, wow, this is the cutest one ever? And by the way, Mbuna cichlids are gorgeous little fry because they're full color almost.
Oh,
yeah.
So cute.
Do you remember like the 10-gallon red zebras? All those little tiny orange slivers?
Yeah.
I mean, they were bright orange. So like the orange fish that you're seeing in the video,
right.
the little babies would be every bit as colorful. Same thing with yellow labs. The ACI would be blue, right? So you had full color juveniles, which is very unusual for just about any fry. I mean, they were just popping full of color. It was awesome.
They were popping.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know if I specifically have a favorite. They're all just so
These
pretty.
ones a little less common. But again, you're not going to get big money for Mbuna cichlids just because a lot of people, they have a hard time. I would say with this too are the peacock cichlids, the African cichlids. That's another one. Same type of breeding. Females hold the eggs in their mouth and then spit them out. Same thing. I would separate the females. Males have a lot of color. Females don't. So if you ever breed peacock cichlids, what do you do with all the females that nobody wants? Because they're going to be silver, tan. It's the males that show all the color. That's what people really want. So those get a little bit more problematic. What do you do with basically half the fish that you breed? Now, here's a personal favorite of yours. Let me go
individual
ahead and turn
species
down the sound. That's the angelfish. Curious how many people here have bred angelfish before. I think it's one of those fish that's like a gateway fish to breeding, where it's like, oh, I had angelfish. Now they can kick out a lot of fry. You're seeing some Apistogramma in here. We'll talk a little bit more about them later. So I didn't want to chop up the video. It was from some angelfish footage that we had. So really cool, but they're going to give you a lot of fry. And the problem with angelfish is it can sometimes be difficult if you have a single strain, no matter what that strain is, to try to unload 50, 60, 100, 150, or 200 angelfish of all the same variety in the same market at the same time. So that can be a little bit challenging, but if you have the right strains of angelfish and you are not flooding the market right away, this, unlike the other fish I've talked about so far, I'd say that these and the shell dwellers probably have the two highest potential, right? For bringing in income if you're into that sort of thing.
I would think so.
And baby angels are also really cute.
Oh my gosh, they are, because that's the size you usually see them like in the pet store.
Yeah.
You see a big tank full of little tiny angels.
Yeah, little tiny miniature, because the shape is so cute. So
cute.
Those are definitely awesome.
Now, question from Oink real fast. Yellow labs, like what kind of age are we talking about when they start breeding?
Young, very young. So I was actually very surprised by yellow labs in terms of how small they were when they would breed. I think the only fish that was probably took me by a bigger surprise was the Geophagus steindactyri, which is also a mouth-brooding Geophagus. My Geophagus were maybe not even 2 inches. I would say yellow labs, 2.5 inches. It's surprising sometimes how young they will breed. They're not always super successful when they're that small and they try to breed the first couple of times, but 2.5, 3 inches, you could definitely start to see some females holding. And for those of you who have never actually kept Mbuna cichlids or any mouth brooding cichlid, the females just look like their throats start to get a little bit larger, and it looks like they're chewing on something, like they're just kind of like chewing on gum or something like that, like constantly moving something around their mouth. Usually when that's the case, you've probably got a female that's holding. In fact, I did a video about how to tell if a female's holding fry or eggs, but it's really cool. Now, there are some fish that definitely are going to be tough to breed, and we're going to get into that. Michael, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. Hello, Primetime. I wanted to give back to you guys for, hold on, let me bring this on up here. Guys, for I'm going to say experiencing me. You guys inspire me so much that I... Inspire, thank you. Okay, you guys inspire me so much that I am in the process of learning what it takes to make a YouTube channel about my passion of oddball fish. Any advice would be great, not for profit. Well, I would probably say oddball fish are cool. So if that is something that you are really into and you've got a lot of experience, that's an awesome thing to share with people. What I tell anybody who's looking to start a YouTube channel is really a couple things. One, be unique in the sense that be yourself, and don't try to be somebody else. You're going to find your own style and let that style naturally flow. And hopefully that style and your personality is going to resonate with other people. Do something that other people aren't doing, because, you don't want to be necessarily the 500th video on how to breed arowana or how to keep arowana. You don't want to be the 650th video on how to keep a shovel-nosed catfish, let's say, unless that 500th video on the arowana or the 650th video on how to breed a shovel-nosed catfish or keep them has got a style that is unique, right? So you want to find your own voice, you want to find your own style, and that's not going to happen right away, all right? So give yourself patience and allow yourself to grow in front of the camera. I leave my first videos up on the channel, and so anybody can go back and see the very first video we ever shot, and that very first video is horrible audio, terrible video, and no tripod, no mic. I didn't know, right? So I had a background in teaching, but I didn't know about how to make a good video. That's not something people naturally know how to do. I didn't know how to act in front of a camera. That's not a normal thing. Looking in front of a camera like we're doing here and talking to it as if you are on the other side, that takes some practice. There's a certain, right? I mean, I remember when you first started doing it, you were like,
I was stressed. I would like literally cry before I'd have to shoot a video because I was wigged out.
It is weird. It took me.
I had to listen to my own voice.
Yeah, there's so many just little weird things that happens. So that first video, my older son Luke at the time was probably, so it was 7 years ago at the end of this month. So I think we released our first video on like the 26th of February in 2017. Is that right?
Yeah.
So we're coming up on our 7-year anniversary, which would have made Luke 12 years old. He's holding my Samsung Galaxy S6 way too far away from me because you could see me and you could see the camera moving up and down. Like I said, I don't have a mic. I don't have a tripod.
Good times.
He's the one holding the camera as I'm walking around doing the fish room tour. And with every single video, we learn something new. Like, hey, you know what? I should probably go out and get a tripod that's capable of holding a camera. Oh, the audio was really terrible. Let me go out and get a little lapel mic for $15. And we made small incremental improvements until... and it's a constant growing experience. And as long as you listen to the people who are watching your channel, like, there's been a lot of suggestions that you all have had in the past where I remember specifically, there was a time I was talking about some type of fish, or I don't remember what the topic was. Yeah. And somebody in a really nice way made a comment. It was a very nice comment. It was done. It wasn't a mean comment or anything. They just said, hey, you know what? You've got all these awesome fish. We sure would like to see the fish a little bit more than you. Now, there's two ways I could have taken that. I could have gotten really offended, and I could have just been like, oh, that person's a jerk. Or you can stop and you can listen and say, hey, you know what? Let me go back and look at that video. Wow, you know what? They're right. What people are here for is not to see my face when I'm talking about these fish. They want to actually see the fish that I'm talking about, or the problem that I'm talking about, or the product that I'm talking about. And so it's a learning experience, and just be willing to learn, be willing to grow, M&C, and have thick skin, because you are going to have people who are going to say mean things. That's just the nature of humanity, right? We are very blessed that the people who watch Primetime Aquatics and the people who contribute to the community in the comment sections here and in the videos, you guys are really, you make our lives so much easier. And I really, truly mean that. Thank you. Thank you for being the type of people that you are, because I have never seen, for the most part, especially from our regular viewers and commenters, nothing but encouragement and people who are trying to help other people and just really, really nice human beings. And that's not the case everywhere.
Nope.
And you're going to get people who, and I've always told people, who's got the bigger problem? You, the creator, or the person who literally takes time out of their day, watches a video, sits down, and let's just assume that everything you said in the video for the most part was factually correct, but they don't like you personally, or maybe you remind them of somebody that they hated in their past life, and they spend 10 minutes constructing the most disturbing comment that you would ever want to read, and they actually spend time in their day filled with anger, filled with just animosity, and send that to you. Who's got the problem, you or them? It's probably not you, right? It's probably not you. How many of you are, I seriously doubt most of the people watching this live stream that you would sit there and write off just a pure hate comment and send it off. Now, It's one thing if somebody is doing something completely inappropriate or completely just
then you gotta
horrible.
set them straight. Yeah.
Yeah, then there are people like, hey, you know what? And even still, there are ways to say certain things that are actually going to get the response that you hope for, and not just, spew off a bunch of horrible things. But yeah, thick skin, you're absolutely right. It's gotten to the point where someone really sends a doozy. We just laugh at it. I mean, trust me, and I hope people believe me when I say this, because it might be a borderline problem for me, right? I mean, I don't care about those mean comments at all. Like, it does not faze me. I will read them. I'm the type of person where when someone leaves that stuff, I'm like, I read it, I laugh, and within 2 seconds, I delete it. And I honestly and truly never think about it again. It has no impact on me at all.
Weird.
Like, none, zero. So if someone wants to do that and get themselves all worked up, I promise you, you got yourself way more worked up writing the comment. It had no impact on me at all. Not mentally, not physically, not emotionally. I have forgotten about it 12 seconds after it's been sent.
But that's a skill, I think, for most people.
It's a skill, and it's not always a good thing, right? It's not, because
it,
I can do that when I'm arguing with somebody and sharing a little dirt here. Like, if we have a disagreement, sometimes we'll have a disagreement, and then I'll 3 minutes later, I'm fine, and I don't try to be fine to like be a jerk.
I'm not. I am a pretty powerful grudge holder.
Yeah, you can hold a grudge a little bit longer, but it's like, okay, we said a few things, and this is going to come as a surprise, but our marriage probably isn't perfect. It's not like a 10 out of 10. Like,
no.
Sometimes we'll have a
like
difference
9
of
out
opinions.
of 10.
All right, we'll have a difference of opinion once in a while, and when we do, I'll get over it like right away. I'll say a few things,
so weird.
And then I'm like, okay, I'm done. And then like 2 minutes later, I'm like, hey, so, and she's like, wait a minute, we just had a disagreement, and you're all like, hey, let's go. I'm like, well, because I said the things.
Bring out my list of demands. And
yeah,
I go, this,
yeah.
And then you said
your list
that.
of grievances around the Festivus poll or something.
Exactly.
So
I have to go.
Okay, well, peace out.
It's the fastest 40 minutes.
Oh my gosh,
Why
it
can't
is.
40 minutes go this fast during my work day? Why?
Yeah. I know. Well, you get out, and then we still have some stuff to talk about, because I'm not done talking about the whole breeding of the fish thing, because we got some fish.
Talk about shrimp and formosas.
Okay.
Because the formosas are super fun when they breed.
I will talk about shrimp
and
formosas.
My first breeding in my tanks was the Fermies.
So we will do that, and we're going to get back on track, because that was a very long-winded answer for what was a question that, but it sparked something in me. I'm sorry. It sparked a thing.
Valentine's Day, everybody.
Yep.
We love you.
Okay, peace
out. Bye-bye. I gotta go now.
I gotta scooch over, so go on and get on out of here. Ditch us. Oh, hold on, I almost smashed my fingers in between the two chairs. Excuse me, please. Okay, this is weird. Let me move that mic away so we're not getting some weird kind of audio thing going on. Okay, Mac, thank you so much for the super chat. It's Valentine's Day, so hit that like, and you may just get lucky. You might just get some lucky fish this evening. Thank you, Mac. Really appreciate it. All right, William, thank you so much for the super chat. Really appreciate it. I didn't see a comment there associated with it, but I really appreciate you hanging out with us tonight. Ben says, I treat trolls the same way I treat overly aggressive cichlids. I rehome them with a delete and a block. Yeah, it's really simple. It's just a couple buttons you press, and they will no longer be capable of, ruining your day if that is what happens. So, all right, let me scroll on down. Okay, so back to the topic at hand, because we are here to talk about fish that are going to potentially breed a lot. Let me give you some thoughts. Not all fish are a good idea to try to breed. All right, some fish, when you see them starting to have feelings towards one another, and you see them starting to act a certain way, it might just be best to stop that situation, to talk them out of it. Maybe they need a cooling down period, separate them, because you could have one heck of a problem. I'm going to give you a really good example.
Eggs were there for around 3 days or so.
South and Central American cichlids. Oh my gosh,
little
I've got
tiny
the sound
juveniles
here, it's confusing everybody. Hold on. A lot of the South and Central American cichlids, like this Midas cichlid, this was the male. The female will probably show up in the video. You see all those little specks? Those are fry. I'm not exaggerating. These two were in a 75-gallon. They decided to breed, and they, hold on, Joanna's got to leave. Y'all hear the squeaky door. They probably had 800 at least, and I'm being very, very conservative. There were probably 800 fry in that tank. Please tell me, what in the heck am I supposed to do with 800 Midas Cichlid Fry? They weren't even full size, not even close. That male at the time of making this video was probably an 8 to 9 inch fish. The female was slightly smaller, maybe 7 inches or so. And what am I going to do with these fish? Because there's very few people who can, A, house a Midas cichlid, B, have the desire to, because they are aggressive. Make no mistake, Midas cichlids, they can be absolute bruisers. And you're going to need a big tank. You're going to need aggressive fish to go with them. What am I going to do with 800 of these things? So eventually what happened was not all of them survived. Some of them went into tanks where they probably weren't going to make it. But I did keep back some. Luckily, I had somebody come in that was associated with some pet stores downstate and took like 100 of them and was able to divvy them up and stuff. But I made a point that never again. So Midas cichlids are a great example. Oscars would be a great example. As cute as it is to see baby Oscars, Craig, convicts breed extremely, extremely prolifically. Those are fish that, trust me, you're not moving the fry. Nobody wants these fish. When we go to the swaps or when I go to the meetings, people will breed convicts because they want the breeder awards points, and nobody will take those fish. Nobody. They can't sell them at the swaps. The pet stores don't want them. Like, what do you do? I mean, at that point, it is impossible. So just keep in mind the really large bruising South and Central American cichlids. I've got a group of Vieja right now in 125. They are gorgeous. Vieja synspilum are amazing fish. They have insane color. I got them from somebody in our GCCA, Greater Chicago Cichlid Association Club. His fish bred, and he got many hundreds. He was giving them away. He was giving them away for free. It's like, anybody who wants them can have them. I'm like, I'll take 10. At that point, he literally had nowhere to put them. Like, he didn't know what he was going to do because the fish were a couple inches already, and he didn't have space for hundreds of Vieja synspilum. I know he went to a wholesaler and was like, you want these things? They're like, we'll take them, but we're not going to give you any money for them. He's like, all right, we'll take as many as you want, because, it's what else are you going to do with it? So Midas cichlids, yeah, those bad boys can be a little bit rough. Let's see here. I saw somebody asking a question about membership thing. I put the link at the top for people, so there's a link there. I don't know if you were already a member. So that was Docs. He said, my gift membership expired. How can I join? I see no join link. So it might not be there, but it's at the top of the chat. So if you go into the live stream, at the very, very top, I pinned a message. That would probably be the way to do it. I've gone back and forth with YouTube about that because my channel I've never seen that button before. So I don't know what's going on. I've talked to them and they're like, oh, it's there. And I'm like, no, it's not. I show them screenshots. And then they show me screenshots where it's there. I have no idea, but it's a pinned comment at the top of the thing. So, all right, now, fish that you might want to consider breeding. All right, so after all that, we've talked about fish that are easy to breed. We've talked about fish that, because they're easy to breed, you got to be a little bit careful about whether or not you want to breed them. Is there a market for them? And again, everything I'm saying is market specific. So the things that I'm saying are really Midwest, Chicagoland area. It might be very different in the upper Northwest, in a different country, the eastern part of the United States. It can be very different. So fish that I have found, if you are looking to breed something that's not insanely difficult, provided you have the water parameters for them, and Joanna kind of mentioned this already, one of which is the Coryt cat. These happen to be panda cories. These are fish that, generally speaking, first of all, they're super peaceful, right? I can't imagine, I've never seen a Coryt cat become aggressive towards really anything, not even their own species. They're just not territorial, at least from all the Coryt cats I've ever kept in the ways that I've kept them. They ignore other fish. In fact, the only thing you have to worry about is, for the most part, Coryt cats have no real defense mechanisms other than the spines and their fins. But in terms of like chasing fish around, they just don't do it. So most people can keep Coryt cats, I guess is my point. They don't need a super huge tank. Usually if you've got at least a 20 gallon, you're in good shape. And there's lots and lots of varieties. The only ones that maybe can be a little bit tougher to move, at least in our area, are just your standard green Aeneas cories, maybe your albino cories, but pretty much for the most part, every other type of Coryt cat, if you can breed them, there's probably a market for them. What's really cool is even the pet stores, I think smart pet store owners would recognize, hey, you know what? I'd much rather buy Coryt cats from a local breeder, because when I get them from a wholesaler that gets them from overseas, A lot of times they're going to have internal parasites and you might have to treat for them. The wholesalers probably aren't going to do that because that's just not in their business model. It doesn't make any sense to do that. It's going to fall either on the pet store or the person who's buying the fish from the pet store, but that's not something you have to really worry about nearly as much if you're buying from a local breeder. And like I said, there's some really high-end Cory cats that people will pay a lot of money for if provided. Not all Cory cats are easy to breed. Right? So a lot of this, like the Panda Cory is pretty easy. Like I said, the Aeneas, the greens, the albinos, easy to breed. Your salt and pepper Corys, those types of things, but they're still in demand. They're really, really awesome fish. So if you're looking for something to breed, we get that question a lot. Certainly one to think of. Lynn says, how about electric blue Acara? I have a couple dozen fry. I'll take those fry. So bring them to quad. We'll work something out. But yeah, those, they don't have the same demand as they used to. They're still very peaceful fish. They're a cichlid that's peaceful. It has awesome color. But then just like a lot of the other cichlids that are medium size, like electric blue Acara, I wouldn't say the firemouths are necessarily as peaceful as them, but those types of fish will breed fairly readily. So the market has adjusted where 5-6 years ago, if you had a 3-inch electric blue Acara, you could easily expect to pay like $35-$40. Now the prices are way, way down because they're a little bit easier to breed, but it's not a bad choice. The other one,
and they are amazing fish, and so
the brilliant green Rasbora. This is a cool fish, and a lot of the Rasboras are awesome. This is a fish that stays really, really small. Of all the fish we've talked about so far, these are the fish that are going to take by far the most effort to breed because they are usually egg scatterers, which means you're going to have to capture the eggs. The fry are going to be extraordinarily tiny. You're going to have to isolate the fry from any other fish in a tank, including all the adult Rasboras, because they are going to eat the fry. They'll eat the eggs. So it does take some effort to breed Rasboras. The other thing, too, is Rasboras are something where you'd probably want to change them out. You know, if you've got a tank dedicated to them, it can be a little bit cumbersome to breed them. It's not like they're going to have like 1 million babies all at once. And so they're having fry pretty much on a regular, almost daily basis. But then you've got fry of different sizes. You can start taking up a fair number of tanks doing this. So you have to be a little bit careful. It is good to switch them up every once in a while just because you don't want to breed the same fish over and over and over again in the same market. But there's definitely a market for them. The other one I would say
as
is
Joanna just set it up.
What
we're doing here.
Let me turn this volume off. This is not the best video of these fish. This happens to be a Apistogramma borellii. Cool fish. These were not adults yet, so the males are not showing full color. They're actually very, very pretty. In fact, these are probably, it was the only B-roll I could find for this thing, but for the live stream before we went live. These are probably one of the less hardy types of Apistogramma, so I'm not necessarily saying the borellii in general, but Apistogramma, these are great fish. People are always looking for them. The problem with Apistogramma is just to breed them and to get the fry to survive, generally speaking, if you've got softer water with a pH that is under a pH of 7, that is going to be a really good thing. They tend to breed, and the fry tend to be a lot more robust in that softer water with a lower pH. But there's tons and tons of different varieties of Apistos. Almost all of them are desirable because they stay small. So, hey, I've got a 20-gallon tank. Yeah, the Apistos will definitely work there. And they're not overly aggressive, and so you can fit them into a community-type tank. We've got some Tetras and some Cory cats. They basically ignore most other types of fish. So definitely the Apistogramma are what I consider, but those are a few, right? So you've got your Corys, you've got your Rasboras. By far, they're going to be the most challenging. The Apistos are really good as well. So, but yeah, that's just some thoughts about fish that fall in love, fish that like to have babies when they do. If you've got questions, by all means, feel free to ask away because now's the time. Lemon Lizard says, which tend to breed better, Cory habrosus or pygmaeus? I don't know if there's a big difference, and I haven't bred either one of these on purpose. I had a whole bunch of Corydoras habrosus in a 33 long, like hundreds and hundreds of them that I brought in, and I wound up getting fry from them. So I would say without even trying, I had a habrosus fry, and I don't remember ever with the pygmies. I think we might have had fry a couple times, but again, I didn't try to breed them. It wasn't like I had, I was trying to breed them regularly. They just happened to show up. But it seems like the habrosus, I had more accidental fry for sure. Chrissy says, we just got some German blue rams on Sunday and 2 of them died. What did we do wrong? Ammonia 0, nitrite 0, nitrate 10. So that's all great. pH is great, 6.6. GH and KH are very low. Awesome. 76 is your problem. Well, hold on. Wait. I mean, the temperature is an issue for German blue rams, and the fact that sometimes they're just weak. It is not uncommon to bring in German blue rams, to buy a group of them and watch half of them die, regardless of your water parameters. They just don't travel well. And I started to say that about the Apistos as well. For pet stores, when they're looking at Apistos, they don't ship well. So when they go from, overseas export to importing to wholesaling to pet store, that's not an ideal situation for Apistos. So if a pet store can find somebody who's breeding them locally, definitely an option. Same thing with the rams. Bolivian rams are a lot easier to breed, not nearly as much color. German blue rams, way more color, a little bit more challenging. I would say the temperature, the reason why I say the temperature, 76 is actually really cold for them. And once they get chilled, even if it's for a day or so, they become extraordinarily weak. So even if you bumped it to 80, actually with the German blue rams, I would go 82 to 84, right? So that's probably where I would be with the German blues, but I don't get them because our water is too hard. They don't like our hard water. They don't like our high pH. And because we heat the entire fish room, I know I've got to heat that tank that they are in. So I've kind of stayed away from them. All right, let me see here. John says, hold on. What is my favorite Apisto? So my favorite, and I have a very specific reason for this, is the Apistogramma panduro. And I like that particular fish for a couple of reasons. One, it's one of the smaller Apistos. So it's almost like a dwarf Apisto, even though most of the Apistos are kind of dwarf cichlids anyway. But the Apistogramma panduro, very small fish. I had a big group of them in a 20 long. The other thing I loved about them is they all got along. I kept them together from the time that I had them, and they were pretty small, and they just grew up together, and they were fine. I've brought in Apistogramma panduro a number of times, kept large groups in a 20-gallon. They pretty much left each other alone. The males get this amazing blue. I did, let me think. Fish room tour, it was probably in 2021 or 2022. It would have been like the second half or somewhere in the second half of all the fish room tours that I did for that year, where I had a 20 long full of Apistogramma panduro. Males get this awesome blue color. They get like a red outline to their fins. They get this really cool, like almost iridescent-y type of like sheen to them. And the females get a really, really pretty yellow. Not the typical Apistogramma yellow where it's like, it's kind of yellowish tan. No, these are bright yellow. So the males and females are different colors. Very peaceful fish. I found them to be incredibly, incredibly hardy. That's why it's the only Apisto that I will bring in when I'm importing fish, because in our hard water with our high pH, they do perfectly fine. They have a long, healthy, happy life. Where a lot of the other Apistos, when I bring them in or when I've tried to breed them, they do okay for a little while, and they just kind of seem to, like the Cockatoides, the Acazesii, the Borellii were a nightmare for me. They didn't last hardly at all. But it's my water parameters, and I know that. So why bring them in for me if I know I'm not going to change the water parameters? So, yeah. But Panduro, very cool. Chris, thank you so much for the super chat. Went to a new store and their fish had insane color. Talked to the owner and he said he uses pink spectrum LEDs. Have you ever seen that before? Cribs were wow. Oh, you can do so much with lighting. Yeah. If you get the right color spectrum in a tank, it makes an incredible amount of difference. And that's why I always tell people when you go on the internet and you see fish that you think are cool, and you want those fish based on the color that you're seeing on the internet, there's a bunch of things that you have to consider. The most obvious things are, did they just jack up the saturation to the point where no fish would actually look like that? They just artificially enhanced the color for the photo. What was the color of the background and the substrate? Because a lot of fish will show better color. Most of the time, most fish will show better color on a dark background with a dark substrate. That's why you see that in our fish tanks. A lot of times, not all the time, but a lot of them do. And then the next thing is what type of lighting. And so that was one of the things that I was talking about in the video I did on Sunday with those aqua illumination blade LEDs. Yeah, you're paying a lot of money for those LEDs, but I promise you for an LED strip light, there is nothing even remotely close to that on the market that's going to enhance the fish color the way that those lights do, right? Really brings out the color. And so fish, the color spectrum is absolutely going to have a big impact. The other thing you have to be really careful about, and it is more predominant than you might think. There are some fish farms overseas, and this is especially true with some cichlids, where they will juice their cichlids. They will put hormones in the water, and all of the fish basically are bathed in those hormones, and they start showing intense breeding colors. They will stay that way for a considerable amount of time, where they will make it from importer to wholesaler to pet store with that insane color. You get them because you're so excited, like, oh my gosh, I've never seen a peacock cichlid this way before, or some of the like the barbs and the rasboras even, and you get them home, and then all of a sudden after a while they start to fade a little bit because they were still young. I mean, these fish are firing up at like 2 inches, which is not a normal thing. That it's not a natural thing, even if they're in a group of the similar species. And then you get them home and they start to fade, and then maybe later if you've got a really nice male, it will start to color up again. But I've seen them put hormones in a tank where even the females are starting to show some abnormal color. So those are just some things to think about. But absolutely, lighting can make a difference. BC Dolphin, thank you so much for being here. Glad you're hanging out with us tonight. Thank you for the super chat. Happy Valentine's Day. How many green Kubutai rasboras in a 55 gallon with 2 female bristlenose, 12 Corys, and 1 electric blue ram would you recommend? Oh, good question. I love that stocking. That stocking is awesome. Now let's just assume that's all you've got in there, and like the green Kubutai is going to be like, bam, this is my open water schooling fish. 40 to 50 at least to start. I think you could do 40. I mean, I know it sounds like a crazy amount, but keep in mind, green Kubutai rasbora, if they get to an inch, you're probably pretty lucky. They're a very small fish, very light bioload. I would not say they're incredibly super active either. So you've got all these things, all these different factors. If I had a 55 gallon, that was my stocking, I'd probably go with 40, see how it looks, wait for them to grow up, and go take it from there. But that's going to be an insane tank. You've got some really good color choices going on there. So you definitely thought that one through. Very nice. Very cool. So let's see here. Chris says, so unethical. It is. And when we're talking about juicing the fish, it is. I wish that wouldn't happen. I don't know how to stop that. I don't know. It's one of those things where you got to be really careful, right? Because then you start asking for these things to stop happening. Next thing you know, you get a white list of fish like they've been trying to do for the last couple of years, where you can only keep these certain fish, and it would absolutely destroy the hobby completely. So Alec says, I've gotten juiced Bosemani rainbow fish too. Yeah, oh, for sure. Yeah, that is a prime candidate for being juiced up, are the rainbow fish, because the intensity of their color, especially around breeding time, is crazy. And so if you can put the hormones in the water and get those guys to color up, they're going to sell instantly. But again, it's not their true colors. Emma, what's going on? Speaking of nanofish, are there any nano shoaling fish you could keep in a 3 gallon? I don't think so. I think a 3 gallon is a little bit too small. A 5 gallon for me is pretty much, unless, like a betta in a 3, I know a lot of people be like, that's still too small. But in terms of keeping other fish, the problem is it's not so much the size, it's like you're implying here with your question, because that's why you're asking, because you know that these fish, they're small, but you got to keep them in groups. So that's why I would say no, not in a 3 gallon, because even a group of 6, if you had even like the smallest of the small, like your chili rasboras, your miras, they're really small, but they're just I think a 3 gallon is still not giving them the space that they need, even given their activity level. So I'd probably opt not to do that, and then just stick with either a betta or like a mystery snail. Shrimp are fine. If you want to throw a half a dozen Neocaridina in there, that could be pretty cool. Second Floor Aquatics gifted 5 Primetime Aquatics memberships. Thank you. Really appreciate you doing that. That's awesome. And because of that, you got Craig. That's awesome. So Craig, Doxy, I know that you were the one asking the question. That's pretty cool. Emma and Brian and what do we got? And Brody are now all prime timers because of Second Floor. Thank you for doing that. That was pretty awesome of you. Thank you. Allison, thank you for the super chat. Purchased 8 striped barbs from you at Greenwater, all doing great. Just out of quarantine and put in tank with silver tip tetras. They just hide. Maybe tetra is too much for them. So one, those 8-banded barbs are incredible fish. I love them. If you've never seen them before, if people don't know what we're talking about, I brought in these barbs, and I love these fish because they don't act like barbs. I mean, I don't know, Allison, if you've seen the same thing. They are barbs. They're the 8-banded barb. They are see-through. So almost like another one, I think they call it the false barb or the false glass barb. I think I've seen those names as well. And you can kind of see through them. So they kind of almost have that glass cat sort of appearance, but they've got these vertical stripes, as the name implies. Really, really chilled out fish. And so I think, to get to your question, just out of quarantine and put in the tank with silver tip tetras. Yeah, the silver tips might be a little bit, they're probably a little bit active. Also, just give them some time, right? So they're in a new environment. It does take them a little while to feel confident. I noticed that even with the ones that I have, because I still got a bunch in a 20-gallon. At first, when I would go, even just going to feed them, they would all rush to the back of the tank. And now, after, they've been in the fish room now for maybe at least 3 to 4 months, I think, at this point. And now when I go to the tank, they're all up in front. They're ready. They know I'm the food guy. And so it really does take them probably longer than other fish to get comfortable with their surroundings. As soon as they learn, hey, these silver tips are not coming after us, they're not bullying us, provided that's the case, and I don't see the silver tips doing that, just give them some time. They will eventually come out. The other thing I want to say is that was really smart. We quarantine our fish for 4 weeks, but you took responsibility as well. And I think that's awesome. We get that question a lot. Hey, people know we're quarantining fish for 4 weeks. So if I quarantine them for 4 weeks, does the buyer have to do that as well? And my answer is always, why wouldn't you? Right? Yes, I did that, and it was fine. But why not, just as a general principle, no matter where you're getting fish from, take the responsibility, quarantine your fish, make sure that they're okay before you throw them in your tank. And I'm glad that you did that, and I'm glad they're working out. But give them some time for sure. All right, hold on a second here. Craig said most barbs are so nippy. Yeah, that's the other thing too. These 8-banded barbs, they are very, very relaxed fish. They remind me a lot of the rummy nose Rasbora in terms of their activity and the way that they act. They're very stationary. They are absolutely awesome fish. I can't speak highly enough about them. They are very unbarb-like, not active, certainly not fin nippy, not rough on one another pretty much at all. Great fish, very methodical, right? Even when they eat, they don't go crazy for food. They kind of pick at the food slowly. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. Lynn says, I still quarantine everything, including plants. Yeah, and that's awesome. And you get a lot of fish from me, but again, it's just get into the habit, do it. You're going to save yourself so many problems later on, because you never know. You never know what's going to happen when they travel, right? So they've been in a bag from us. We might bag them up at 4 o'clock in the morning. By the time you pick them up, it's noon. So they've been in a bag for 8 hours, and you've got your time to get home. And while 99% of our fish are fine, you never know when fish get a little bit stressed out from that. And why not just make sure that it's going to be okay? Boy says, what time is it? Man, you know what time it is. It's prime time. With your boy Jason here, coming at you live. I can't even say Joanna because she's not here. She's probably feeling pretty good about that right now. Max says, I have 5 band barbs, never seen them hostile, great community fish. The other one I really, really love, and I almost brought them in for this go around, and I just ran out of tank space, but I think I'm going to get them in again. And you saw them in one of the videos I did for the 125, and that is the snakeskin barb. Love. That is pretty close to one of my certainly my top 3 barbs. Again, really great fish, tolerate one another well. They're not like killing each other off like tiger barbs do and some of the others. Pretty much ignore other fish. They're not fin nippy. They're not chasing other fish around. They can be a little bit reclusive at times, but once they get comfortable, especially as you put other fish in the aquarium, they are really awesome. And the red color on those fish, if you put a fully comfortable colored up snakeskin barb next to a tiger barb, for me personally, I would take the snakeskin barb every single time. And tiger barbs can look pretty stinking awesome. So, yeah, it's very, very cool fish. All right, hold on. I was scrolling around and everything got all stuck and messed up here. Hold on. Dang it. I don't know where I was going to ask, or I saw a question. Charles says, hey, if I have anoxic conditions, how do I remedy that? Is my only option to remove some substrate? So we're talking about substrate anoxic conditions. I personally it wouldn't bother me either way, whether the substrate is anoxic or not. I mean, the substrate, depending on how deep it is always going to be an anaerobic environment. The main problem I have I'm not going to get into this whole discussion. This is a full-length discussion. I think John and I at some point are going to talk about this on the podcast. And by the way, if you missed it, we are doing a brand new YouTube channel, the Tank Talk Podcast. Check it out on YouTube. Released our first video on Monday. But that is a subject that we're going to be talking about at length at some point, the whole anoxic substrate and setting up that environment, because I don't think it benefits the aquarium nearly as much as people make it out to. And again, this is from my microbiology background. It's not bro science that we're talking about here. But anyway, if you've got the anoxic conditions in your substrate, it really doesn't matter. I know a lot of people worry about the buildup of hydrogen sulfide and stuff like that. And believe me, I have had situations, and I find it to be more common. This is going to sound crazy, but I've actually found that problem to happen more often in gravel than with sand. And so when I stick a gravel vac in gravel and I hit some of those anaerobic pockets, maybe where food has kind of decayed, and you hit that bad boy and all of a sudden you're smelling sulfur. But here's the deal. I've never lost a single fish. So I've done these water changes. I know I'm releasing hydrogen sulfide. If I'm smelling it, it had to be coming through the water. Never. Not one fish ever went belly up because of that. And if you're not disturbing the substrate, it's probably not going to matter anyway. So the little amount of whatever is being produced there is going to just gas off into, especially if you've got any kind of water movement going on, any kind of filtration, sponge filters. So if you're really worried about it, then yeah, you could thin out the substrate. If you've got a really deep layer of substrate, you could thin it out and cut down on the amount of anaerobic environment that's there. Second floor says, at Chris, where do you live? I'd love to find tanks looking for homes. Nice. All right, hold on. I saw a thing. Oh, okay, Charles. I asked because my plants seem to melt at the base, but the tops are doing well. So that could potentially be a different thing. It depends on the plants. But here's what I can tell you when I have done certain types of stem plants. For instance, water sprite, water wisteria, hornwort, a lot of these plants that you often see planted, I have never been successful putting these plants anywhere near a substrate so that they look like they're planted in a substrate, because they don't really have a root system. And then people are like, oh, well, you can just kind of plant them, lightly. And it's like, no, they always just rot. And then they break off and they float. So what I have done with things like hornwort, when I had a lot of water sprite and water wisteria, is I would let it float. And then it would grow from the top down. And then it would start to send, when the stems got close enough to the ground or to the base of the aquarium, they would send out those little roots, but those little roots would grab onto rocks and start grabbing onto wood and the sides of the glass, and then it would kind of hold itself down. So I'd actually go backwards with the stem plants. I would actually let them float, grow, and then work their way from top to bottom as they got bigger, larger and larger, and then they would kind of anchor themselves. But when I tried to plant them, it was always a mess. So, and I didn't have any anoxic conditions. All right, let me see here. Oh my gosh, where did it go? I thought I had it and then I missed it. Oh, well, I don't know where it went. Lemon says, Guppy Fry got sick with flukes and I moved them to a quarantine. How long do I need to wait before putting the fish into the original tank without them getting sick with flukes as well? That's a great question. So if that happened to me, I would follow what I typically do for a quarantine process. And that is, since you're taking the fish out, essentially what you're doing is you're quarantining them and you're treating them in the quarantine tank. You are observing the fish where the other fish that did not exhibit the signs and symptoms of flukes, or at least the signs, because we really can't talk to the fish about the symptoms, but they seem to be fluke free. That's awesome. So you're dealing with the fish that have the flukes. Once you've successfully treated them, I would wait 4 weeks. I'm always setting that timeline at 4 weeks from the last sign of disease. And so people ask all the time, if I had fish that were sick, let's say it was ick, and I treated the ick, and let's say I didn't notice the fish had ick until a week after they were in quarantine, or they really didn't start to show the signs of ick until after a week. Well, if I treat them for a week, does that mean they only need 2 weeks for the rest of the quarantine process, because that will equal 4? No. That means the minute I see the last spot, it's now the clock has reset and I got another 4 weeks to go. I know it kind of stinks, but you're doing the right thing. And we want to make sure that our display tanks are healthy and we're not introducing any kind of disease. So a little bit of patience there. Trust me, it will go a long way. I promise. Emma says, I love cherry barbs. I have the veil tail and love them. Yeah, cherry barbs are really cool because you have the standards and the males on the cherry barbs. Oh my gosh, they fire up and get super red. Cherry barbs, if you've never kept them before, small fish, they're going to max out at around, maybe an inch or so. Females get a little bit rounder, still pretty cool color. They still have some red, but the males are the ones that really fire up. They have nice, bright red, especially when there's females in the area. So you have the standards. You also have the albinos, and I think the albino cherry barbs are a really pretty fish as well. There's a lot of fish where the albino version, I'm like, nah, it's just not my thing, right? So if I had the choice between a standard rainbow shark and an albino rainbow shark, I would take the standard over the albino. If I was looking at Cory cats, I would probably take the standard version as opposed to the albino. But there are a few where I think they rival the standard variety. The cherry barb is one, and then the Heckelei. The Actorictes Heckelei cichlid is another one where the albinos are awesome. So, and then, like you said, they've got the standard fin and the long fin. So a lot of variety there. Pretty cool. All right. Where did I see the questions? Charles says, hey, folks, don't forget to like the video and hit the subscribe button. I like the reminder. Thank you for doing that, because I very rarely ever do, because I just don't think about it. But yeah, why don't you go punch the like button right in the thumb. Give it a smack in the thumb Valentine's Day present. How about that? That would be pretty cool. All right. I'm scrolling. Farallon, glad you're here. It's been a little while since I've seen your name pop up. Thanks for hanging out with us. Happy Valentine's Day to you too and everybody else. Glad you're chilling with us this fine evening. Very nice. Doxy says, how do you tell with fry? They are so tiny. A lot of fry are very, very tiny. You just see specks kind of swimming, floating around your aquarium, depending on what they are. But yeah, you can have some really, really tiny fry. And I'll miss it sometimes because you pretty much have to be wearing like reading glasses or something to see some of those fry. I remember when we were breeding peacock gudgeons, those were things where, oh my gosh, we would take the peacock gudgeon eggs out of the cave, because they would instantly, as soon as the fry hatch, if they leave the cave, the male kind of traps them in there almost like a bristlenose does. And then once they leave, they're just instantly getting eaten up by anything else in the tank, including other peacock gudgeons. So as soon as I would see the male in the cave, I would get the male out, which, by the way, was not always an easy thing to do, because they would kind of wedge themselves, and we would have those tapered watering stakes for caves. So get him out, and then this was not like the most gentle way to do it, but I don't care because I got tons and tons of fry. I would take a butter knife and a turkey baster, and I kind of scrape the eggs off the inside of the cave and suck them up with a turkey baster, and then in an egg tumbler they would go. And the eggs are really small, and there'd be, of course, hundreds of them. Tumble them, and then I would start to see the little tails start to form, and you see the egg sacs, and then from there I would put them in an aquarium. And oh my gosh, were those fry tiny? And sometimes you didn't even realize how many you had, because the fry, for whatever reason, we would have gravel in all these well-established tanks and some Java moss, and I think that was one of the reasons why we got such really, really good fry survival rates, because we had a 20 long like that, and then we had a 37, believe it or not, a 37 gallon. So people are always like, put tiny fry in a small container. I don't know. With them, I never did that. So they would all go in this 37, and then there was gravel in there, and then they would just go right to the bottom. And so at any given time, you might see 30 or 40. So every time they had a spawn, I'm like, oh man, they only had like 30 fry. And they would eat off the Java moss, and I would wait for their egg sacs to go away, and then I'd start feeding them live baby brine. Within a few weeks, they'd be a little bit larger. I'm like, oh my gosh. I remember one time in a 37, I'm not kidding you, I probably had 500 or 600 in that tank, and I'm like, where did they all come from? They were all in the gravel, and they were all in the Java moss. You just couldn't see them. So it was crazy. Michael says, I need more peacock gudgeons in my life. We still have some in the fish room. It's an awesome, I mean, we added them to the gudgeon goby tank. So yeah, pretty awesome little fish. Brian says, speaking of fish I love, two of my peacock gudgeons seem to have taken a liking to each other. their antics are hilarious to watch. Oh my gosh, the dances that the males do for the females to try to, because what the male's going to do is he's going to go by the cave opening and he's going to try to get the female like, hey man, come on over here, come over to my new home, check it out. And he does all the dancing and the fins and all everything, and the female's trying to play hard to get. And when you see, so basically it's a really easy fish to get to breed as long as you've got decent water parameters. I mean, I was breeding them at a pH of around 8 to 8.2, GH and KH of 10 degrees. Everything you read is like, oh, you can't do that. Well, then I don't know how I bred all these thousands of peacock gudgeons, but they did just fine where I was at. So as soon as you see the male and female in there, when the female leaves, once the male's in there by themselves, they've got about 9 days. So about 9 days, and they are going to hatch. So we're usually about on day 7 or 8. I am getting those bad boys out. Cody says, please check out my super chat. Did I miss one? Sometimes I don't like this new screen. It's good because it's larger, but it's not as obvious when things come through anymore. So I'm sorry if I ever miss something. Do what Cody did. Don't be afraid to be like, hey man, I left you a question, check it out. Go to the other little list here. So Cody, thank you so much. I'm sorry that I missed it originally. So back in August 22, you made a video about red cherry tetras. Yes, would you be interested in making another video on those? I've been considering getting some. The video, I don't know if it would be any different. We still have them. We still have the same group in the fish room. But, I mean, yeah, that species profile. Well, unless you haven't seen the species profile, but I think that would have August of 22. I did a species profile on them. I don't know if that's the video you're referring to or if that was just one of the fish room tours that maybe was like one of the parts of the fish room, but I did do a species profile. I don't really have anything additional to say about them because nothing has really changed in terms of my knowledge. Great fish. So the cherry red tetra, first of all, you just need to see this. If you haven't seen those fish, check out the species profile I did on the red cherry tetra. It is insane. I was at a wholesaler one time, and one of the guys that I knew really well said, hey, you got to see these. So he shows me this tank, and I'm looking in this tank, and I'm looking at these fish, and this is one of those times where I'm like, man, are these things juiced? What in the heck is going on? He's like, no. He's like, I brought some of these home, and they have been like this from the day I got them. And so I'm like, okay. So I think at the time I got like 20 of them, and I brought them back just for myself, and they were insane. And they're, I guess, in terms of their look, if you haven't seen them, they kind of resemble maybe in terms of their body shape, like maybe a Priscilla tetra, otherwise known as an X-ray tetra, or a Serpate tetra, that kind of size, that kind of shape. But imagine the most vibrant, brilliant orange color in a freshwater fish. Yeah, it's probably one of the most vibrant oranges that I've seen. So amazing fish, but not very easy to find. And when they are around, they are expensive, because I remember even wholesale, I was like, oh my gosh, getting 20 of these, this is going to be expensive. But I wanted them because I thought that they were that awesome. So if you have a chance to get the red cherry tetra, it's otherwise known as the Mzuel tetra, M-Z-U-E-L, I think is how you spell it. But absolutely an outstanding fish. I mean, it is a true showstopper. To me, it's worth like every single penny. Boy says, my polar blue parrotfish are having babies left and right. All I feed them is crushed up flakes and putting flakes in a container with some quarters and shaking it up until pulverized. Yeah, I mean, if they're having that many fry, again, that's one. You got to be a little bit careful with when it comes to breeding, because there will be a market, because out of those types of cichlids, the polar blue are probably some of the most desirable, and especially because they don't get as large. They're actually not super aggressive, right? I'm sure you've seen that as you've been keeping them and breeding them. So not as large as like the regular parrot cichlids or the parrotfish that, the big orange goofy looking ones. Goofy in terms of the way they act, not like their physical appearance, although their physical appearance is pretty comical. But they don't get as large. They kind of have that shape. They're not terribly aggressive, but it's still, that market sometimes can be a little bit tough to find. So if they're breeding like crazy, that might be one where you're like, okay, as you start to get, hey, I've got 30 fry, now I've got 40, now I've got 50. It's like, all right, hold it, time out. Let's see what I can do with these 30, 40, or 50 before they have the next batch of 20, because that can start to get a little problematic. Second floor says, just curious. Oh, you're talking to Mac. Mac, so hold on. It's almost 9:30 here. So Mac, what is it over there? It's got to be, let me guess, like 2:30, 3:30 in the morning, I think. Because I used to have friends that I used to talk to all the time. I've actually got people that somebody I talk to that lives in the Netherlands. And so it's always funny because when I get up, I'll usually have a message and then we'll message back and forth, but then I know that they're way ahead. So it's like right now, if I sent the message, I'd be waking them up 3:24. See, I was pretty good. So yeah, six hours ahead compared to where I'm at. Pam says, I have a 29-gallon tank with a small angelfish, 6 harlequin rasboras, a pandagara, and 3 pandacories. What else would you add? I would probably 3 pandacories. I might try to go with another 3 pandas because that would be pretty cool. They like to be in a group. They actually tend to show almost comical behavior the more that you have. I think 6 pandacories would probably be pretty awesome if you could do it. Same thing with the harlequin rasbora. I think you would be really rewarded. Sometimes people underestimate how fish behavior can change when you add even more of the same fish. So right now I got the 6 harlequins, and yeah, they kind of sort of interact with one another. Add in another 6 and watch how that community dynamic changes, because that can be really cool to see. So I would start there. I would go with another 3 pandas, another 6 harlequins. If you wanted to do something else, one, I would keep an eye on that angelfish in a 29 long term, because as it gets larger, it might start to not appreciate other fish in its general territory. It probably is going to ignore the harlequin rasboras, but you just never know 100% because it's a cichlid, and sometimes it's like, hey, this whole 29-gallon, based on the amount of space here, this is mine. So at some point you might have to move that angelfish up in the world into like the land of the 55-gallon perhaps. But yeah, so like maybe 12 harlequins. And then the other fish that I really like for a 29-gallon is the brilliant green rasbora. Not expensive, insanely cool colors. So check out the brilliant green rasbora. That's a really cool fish. All right, let me see here. Whip says, I'm not sure, but I believe blood parrots are sterile. Yeah, that is true. Don't run to the back with that, but that's what I heard. Yeah, that is true. And I can't remember. Was it the severum and the flower horn that gives rise to the blood parrot? Somebody correct me if I'm wrong, but I thought that was the combination. I thought it was the severum and the flower horn. Although as I'm saying that, maybe, I don't know. But yeah, if you have blood parrots that try to breed, generally speaking, I've never heard of anybody actually getting fry from them. They will try to breed, but I don't think the fry are ever a possibility. The Zen says, Whip, we made the Tank Talk podcast and FFL page too. That has all the different links if you want. Thank you so much. That is awesome. Very cool. Yeah, I'm really excited about the Tank Talk podcast because that longer format behind the scenes. So when you are putting stuff on YouTube, you are concerned about making the video as engaging as you possibly can and doing it in a time where you're very time conscious. So somebody who's doing videos that really values the time of the viewer, I'm not trying to waste your time. So I'm not trying to take an 8-minute video and make it a 15-minute video. And so I'm trying to hit the most important things in a succinct way and provide as much value as I can and for a time limit that most people are going to want to watch. What's nice about the podcast, especially as we were able to discuss some of these topics and do it over a longer format, which is what people normally expect in a podcast format, we can really kind of flesh out all the nuances of the things that we're talking about. And oh my gosh, it's like, we look at the clock and like, wow, we've been talking about this for an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. And you really get into the nitty gritty. And so that's what we're going to be doing as we go through, as you watch these episodes now, starting on Monday and kind of working through, week after week. As we hit a subject, we can do it in a level of detail that maybe we don't necessarily do in a YouTube video, because we want to make sure that we're being super succinct and giving people a lot of information, but maybe not drilling down as much as detail just because of the nature of YouTube videos. And Tam says, flowerhorn is some type of Vieja crossing with one of the Midas looking species. The exact species combination has since been lost. Well, another thing too is there are, from my understanding, and again, I'm not a flowerhorn expert, but never even kept flower horns, but I thought that there are natural flower horns in Central America, if I'm not mistaken. I thought I read that somewhere, but again, don't look at me. I'm not a flower horn expert person. Craig says, I like the long form subject matter. Well, thank you. I'm enjoying it too, because of the nature of me being a professor. I like to be able to drill down on things a little bit deeper and really study the cause and effect of certain things. Blake says, late joining, but how's everyone? Everyone is doing great. I hope you're doing the same. Doing awesome. Happy Valentine's Day. All right, everybody. I think it is time for all of us to enjoy the rest of our Valentine's Day. And maybe for some of us, that means going night-night, because it's getting late for some of you. So thank you. Thank you so much for being here. Really always appreciate everybody here, because you make the community awesome. As I said earlier on, it's awesome having you all here. Thank you for all the great questions. Thank you for everyone for the super chats and for Second Floor and all the new members and everybody that came through as a result. We will be back next Wednesday at 8 p.m. Central Standard Time. I'm sure we'll have something cool to talk about. Again, check out the podcast thing on the Tank Talk podcast, and hopefully you enjoy it. Really appreciate you being here, and we will see you next week. Have a great weekend. Bye-bye, everybody.